Before you even post a picture, your mind edits your body, your smile, your angle, your waist. You scroll past images of women being beautiful, desirable, controlled, consumed, and you wonder, are we ever really looking at ourselves or just seeing ourselves through someone else's eyes? Welcome to the world of the male gaze, and it's not just about men, it's about power, about who gets to look and who is always being looked at. In today's episode, we look into the theory that changed the way we watch movies, take selfies, and see each other. This is the personal lens, and this is the male gaze. Welcome to the Personal Lens, where we explore the political through the personal. I'm your host, and today we are diving into a gaze that follows many of us even when we are alone, the male gaze. It's in our films, on our streets, on Instagram, in our reflections, and sometimes even in our own minds. But what is the male gaze really? Why is it so important to understand how we are being looked at and who gets to do the looking? In this episode, we'll look into the theory, trace its roots, and reflect on how the male gaze shapes not just media but our everyday behavior, identities, and relationships. And do not worry, it's not all abstract theory. We'll be talking about Bollywood, Instagram, school dress codes, and why a few movies felt like a tiny revolution. So let's begin by seeing how we've been seen. What is the male gaze? In 1975, British film theorist Laura Mulvey wrote an essay that changed the way we talk about cinema. It was called Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, and it introduced the term male gaze, a way of describing how women are represented in films not as people but as objects meant to be looked at by a heterosexual male viewer. Let's break that down. In most traditional films, men are the doers. They act, they pursue, they make choices. Women, they're often there to be looked at. Their presence is meant to be pleasing to the male protagonist and by extension to the male viewer. Mulvey argued that there are three levels of gaze: the camera's gaze, the character's gaze within the story, and the audience's gaze. All three traditionally are male. That's how the male gaze becomes embedded in the structure of film and by extension popular culture. Take any classic Bollywood movie. Let's think of Kabir Singh again. Remember how Preeti barely speaks. She is mostly just there, beautiful, submissive, quiet. Kabir sees her, decides she's his, and the rest of the film is about his journey, not hers. Her existence is filtered entirely through his gaze. Think of a typical Bollywood item number. The camera pans her waist, her lips, her chest. She dances, he watches, and we watch him. We are not watching her story, we are watching his gaze. So now about everyday gaze beyond the screen. And here's the thing, the male gaze didn't stay in the cinema. It came home with us. It shows up when we hesitate to wear a dress because too much leg. We angle that photo to look thinner before posting. We smile in meetings even when we don't want to because we look nicer that way. This is what researchers call self-objectification, when we start watching ourselves from the outside. It's not just being seen, it's performing being seen. Even social media reflects this. Studies show women tend to post more photos showing their face or body, while men often post achievements, objects, or scenery. It's subtle, but it adds up. The camera may be in our hand, but the audience, we imagine, is still male. Let's turn back to Indian cinema because Bollywood has been one of the loudest promoters of the male gaze. From Kabir Singh to Dabangg, women are often side characters, either as mere distractions or moral anchors. So we are not all in movies. But the gaze doesn't stop at the cinema hall. Let's talk about self-objectification, the internalization of the male gaze. You know that moment when you're walking down the street and feel the need to fix your posture or adjust your clothes? Not for comfort, but because you feel eyes on you. That's the male gaze at work. Psychologist Barbara Fredrickson and her colleagues coined the term objectification theory, which explains how women begin to see themselves through the lens of how others might perceive them. This leads to anxiety, body shame, and reduced mental performance in daily tasks. Think about how we take selfies, how we check our reflection, how we think about what to wear based on who might be watching. And social media has intensified this. On Instagram, women are often rewarded for looking a certain way, hyper feminine and curated. Influencers often speak of needing to look presentable even when they're posting about mental health or personal struggles. Let's talk about school dress codes. A place that's supposed to shape young minds often ends up disciplining young bodies, especially those of girls. In many Indian schools, girls are told not to wear skirts above the knee, not to wear sleeveless tops, not to wear lipstick, button up their shirts, and the justification? It's distracting. But distracting for whom? Let's be honest, most dress codes aren't about promoting discipline, they are about managing male desire. These rules send a loud, clear message to girls. Your body is a problem. Your clothes invite attention. If anything happens, it's your fault. And what does that teach boys? That they are not expected to control themselves, that women must shrink, cover, adjust to help them behave. This is the male gaze institutionalized. It's the idea that the girl's body must always be managed, not for her safety, but for others' comfort. And it starts early. That's not just inappropriate, that's dangerous. It turns the classroom from a space of learning into a site of surveillance, where girls learn to be ashamed of their bodies, where comfort is sacrificed for modesty, where education comes with a dress code that's more about control than curriculum. And then there's the dupatta. Maybe not all, but still in many Indian schools and colleges, not wearing your dupatta correctly or at all can get you a warning, a suspension, or at least some classic passive aggressive moral lecture from a faculty member. And here's what's striking: the dupatta isn't just cloth, it's symbolic armor. It says, I'm respectable, I'm not asking for attention. But why does a girl need armor in a place of learning? Why is her education conditional on how invisible she can make herself? Girls are punished, but boys are excused. What happens when a girl violates dress code? She is shamed, told she's inviting trouble, sent back home. But when boys leer, tease, or comment, they are rarely punished because, again, the onus is on girls to not provoke them. It's the same logic that blames a rape survivor's clothes instead of the rapist's actions. That turns a short skirt into a justification. That gives the male gaze institutional backing. But girls aren't taking it silently anymore. Across India, we've seen students calling out sexist dress codes, reclaiming their agency, and demanding autonomy. Here's the question we should be asking schools and colleges: are we educating girls or are we just training them to shrink? Because the male gaze doesn't begin in movies or magazines. It begins in school corridors, in uniform policies, in side glances, in whispered warnings. And it thrives in silence. But every girl who pushes back, every student who says, I deserve to be seen as a mind, not a body, chips away at that gaze. And someday soon, maybe, we'll walk into a classroom where what matters isn't the length of your skirt, but the breadth of your ideas. Now about intersectionality and cultural nuance. And here's where it gets more complicated. The male gaze isn't one size fits all. Who is being looked at and how depends on race, caste, class, and region. Scholar Gayatri Spivak's idea of the subaltern is relevant here. Who gets to speak or be seen as fully human in narratives dominated by mainstream, which is again often upper caste North Indian perspectives. This is still the male gaze, but now layered with regional and racial color to it. The good news is people are pushing back. There's a shift happening and it's beautiful. So, how do we resist the male gaze? We do it by shifting who tells the story, by changing the camera angle, literally and metaphorically. Let's talk about the female gaze. It doesn't mean just reversing the rules. It means telling stories where women are people, not props. And then there's Bell Hook's idea of the oppositional gaze, that act of looking back critically as resistance. It's powerful, especially for those who've been silenced, Dalit women, queer people, trans creators. She wrote about how black women look back at dominant culture with defiance, refusing to be erased or fetishized. This too is a form of political resistance, looking back. And in the digital age, we see queer creators, fat positive models, and Dalit artists reshaping how bodies are viewed. The act of looking and being seen is political. Online, we see this disruption every day. From comedians like Sumukhi Suresh joking about aunties and bras, to Trinetra Haldar Gumaraju owning beauty and trans identity on her own terms. This isn't just a shift in who's in front of the camera, it's a revolution in who's behind it. When we talk about the female gaze, it's not simply the opposite of the male gaze. It's not about women looking at men the way men have looked at women. It's about reclaiming subjectivity, interiority, and empathy. In Thappar, one slap becomes a turning point, not because of the physical pain, but because it wakes her up to a life where her feelings have always come last. The camera never lingers on her body, it lingers on her silence, her realization. In Lapata Ladies, two brides are accidentally swapped on a train. It sounds like a comedy, but what we get is introspection. Who are these women when they are no longer seen as someone's wife? The camera is gentle, it's curious, not consuming. These women don't exist for male attention, they exist for themselves. Darlings is another stunner. Alia Bhatt's character is stuck in a cycle of abuse, but the film never sensationalizes it. It gives her space, anger, wit, and the power to end her own story. These films aren't just flipping the script, they're flipping the gaze. Lipstick Under My Burqa was revolutionary because it centered women's desire, rage, and dreams, not from a male point of view, but from within their own lives. Here's where we bring it back to the personal. When did you first become aware of being watched? Was it in school when a teacher asked you to sit properly? Or when you were told your dress was too short? Or when you posted a photo and someone commented on your body, not your words? And for men listening, have you ever considered how you look at women in films, on the street, online? This episode isn't about guilt, it's about awareness. The gaze is not just about eyes, it's about power. And the male gaze isn't just about movies or men, it's about a system that trains all of us, men, women, non binary folks, to see women through a narrow, objectifying frame. But once we become aware, we can disrupt it. We can choose to look differently. We can choose to see each other and ourselves more fully. So here's the question. What happens when we stop performing and start just being? The male gaze teaches us to trim ourselves. Crop the belly, soften the voice, lower the eyes. But we aren't made to fit inside frames. We were made to live outside them. Every time we tell our story raw, unfiltered, real, we crack that lens just a little. Before I go, I'll leave you with this. Next time you're watching a movie or scrolling Instagram, ask yourself, who is this image for? Who gets to look and who gets looked at? That question alone can open up an entirely new perspective. Thanks for tuning into The Personal Lens. If this episode made you reflect, share it with a friend or an uncle who loves Kabir Singh a little too much. If this episode sparked something in you, share it. Talk about it, reflect on it. Because once you shift the lens, you never look the same way again. Do not forget to subscribe and follow us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep reclaiming, and keep looking deeper through the personal lens. Thank you.